Let's now talk about the challenges, because let's face it, the road ahead to sustainability comes with a lot of hurdles, and navigating those challenges also means being aware of the problems that we are surrounded by. And talking specifically about e-mobility, and as that session earlier pointed out, there is a need to realize the challenges need to be dealt with, and also that time is running out to actually deal with them. And that brings us to our next session. It's a very special conversation coming up, focusing on sustainable last mile mobility. We will have Akash Gupta, co-founder and CEO Zypp Electric, in conversation with Ankit Awasthi, who is the head new mobility practice, NRI Consulting and Solutions. Thank you very much for being here. If I can please have you both up on stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly, for the introductions. Good evening, Akash. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a enthralling evening this has been, starting from the amazing performance by Indian Ocean and the various words of wisdom shared by all of our speakers earlier today. So, Akash, before we get into the nitty-gritties of the last mile logistics, why don't we talk a bit more about the genesis of Zypp Electric? You've been a very successful entrepreneur, and before that, you've been in various other different companies. So, what led you to create Zypp Electric, and what was the thought process behind that? If you could shed some light on it, please.
Sure. Thanks, Ankit, and thank you for having me here. It's a great initiative of mission sustainability. I must firstly congratulate for all of you to think about this. So it goes back to my early roots, right? I come from Jaipur. I was born in a middle-class family. The only thing that I would say that my mom would have told me is that your name is Akash and you need to just touch the sky at some point in time in life. I think that ingrained in me, and I was on a quest of my own with a Marwadi bug in me, right? But the quest was to possibly build something of my own. But I didn't have the resources, neither the knowledge nor the courage to start on day one, because possibly the idea was not right when I was trying multiple things. So I had a long corporate career of 10 years, worked in companies like Airtel, a couple of startups like Snapdeal and MobiQuick. But while I was on a quest to find my calling and to leave it all and start up, I wanted to create a large impact. That was one thing that when I go back after the hard work, because I know that building a startup is not easy. Entrepreneurship is like every day you get beaten. And once you get beaten every day and you're going back to your bed, at least you feel that you're doing something for the larger world, right? So I was on a lookout of ideas that could really have a large impact. And around 2017, when I was on this lookout, and this is like global travel, a lot of research, learning about startup world, entrepreneurship, I stumbled on this thought of electric mobility, right? It was picking up in a few areas, like US, Tesla was doing well. China, there were a few things happening and they were way ahead on electric mobility. And while we all talk about pollution, right? We talk about AQIs. I thought that maybe this is my calling, right? Can I do something to impact, right, this large problem of pollution and climate change, which is out here? And yeah, I think once I stumbled on it, it was somewhere in 2017 May, and then it was no looking back. I said that this is the business that I want to build. Within a few months, I quit. I started building a team around that. I registered the company within a month. And yeah, I think I'm happy now that I took that step.
I'm sure. I think what a journey it has been. We've seen Zypp Electric grow and prosper over the last 5-6 years. Akash, you mentioned, about your experience or what you saw happening in US and China.
Yeah.
And let me delve a little deeper into that.
Sure.
Because particularly what we have seen is that the Western or developed economies, for them, electric predominantly was four-wheelers. Yeah. India is a very different market. For us, the biggest share in the automotive sector is actually the two-wheelers.
Yeah.
And that's precisely where you are.
Absolutely.
And we've seen this last mile mobility logistics really take a shape, of its own, take a life of its own in the last 4 or 5 years since when you become active probably. So would you care to elaborate on that? How did you figure out that this two-wheeler segment, right? This last mile mobility is where you want to get into?
Yeah. So early on, we dribbled a lot, multiple. We failed, for almost an year and a half. We were figuring out what to do, what not to do. The mission was clear. Mission zero emission is our, anthem. And we wanted to do something in that space, but it was not very evident. So we figured out while we were doing different things, a lot of companies were approaching us. Our brand was visible. Zomato was reaching out to us, hey, can you deliver goods for us? You talk about electric, let's do it. We've been not able to do this. Same was Amazon, same was Big Basket. And at that time, as a founder, when you're struggling in your thinking that what to do, and this customer who's asking for this solution, we said that, the least that we can do is try. And we started trying. At that time, there were no OEMs properly making these bikes. There was no charging infrastructure. Nobody knew how to maintain these electric bikes. Finding drivers was not easy. And then, it's just, finding all of that over and over again. The tech, we had to build all in-house in terms of fleet management and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the only option that we had was to try. And once we started trying and we started deploying some of those vehicles, we saw that there was crazy adoption because at this time, Zomato, which is struggling in terms of going electric, and a lot of government pressure is for all of these companies to adopt EVs. Delhi is the most active, by the way, right? They found their calling that, hey, this is working. There's a player who's coming forward. They are putting the vehicles, they are putting the charging infrastructure, they are getting the drivers for us, they are solving the ecosystem, they are finding financing for it in various creative means. And then the ball started rolling. I mean, COVID happened, which was 2020, and at that time we had like a crazy mad rush. Everyone wanted last mile delivery, which is reliable, and sustainability was an icing on the cake, right? So essentially that was in a way our fathom into two-wheelers. And then when we took a look at the entire industry, today there are 3 key shifts happening in the Indian logistics market, right? One of them is a lot of e-commerce is now moving towards fast commerce. When you order on Amazon or a Zepto or a Big Basket, you want things delivered today. You don't want to wait for 5 days. And when you enable fast commerce, it's going to happen more with two-wheelers and three-wheelers because you can pick, go. You can't wait and fill a truck. It'll take days, right? So that's one change. The second change which is happening is the entire shift from unorganized deliveries to organized. Because you don't see two-wheelers as today part of even the logistics policy of our country. While today almost 50% of all logistics is happening via smaller vehicles. So yeah, in fact, I'm talking to government for that. The third key shift, which is most important, is the shift from IC to electric. And not just because of sustainability, while we are talking about mission sustainability, but electric mobility can be adopted only if it makes sense financially, right? So when we started looking at it, financially it makes a lot of sense. The TCO of an electric vehicle over a lifespan is better than a petrol vehicle. So that is the key point why this change is happening.
Got it. Akash, thank you so much for that detailed and elaborate answer of yours. And there were many points I wanted to pick on. But let me first pick up on this point where you mentioned that you're working on zero emissions, right? So definitely EVs offer zero tailpipe emissions.
Yes.
But since we are on topic of mission sustainability now, so let me talk about what is the well-to-wheel emission of electric vehicles, right? And various reports, in fact, we've also done some studies around it, and they state that the well-to-wheel emissions, that is considering also the energy generation of electric vehicle, may not be too far away from the conventional ICE vehicles. So from that perspective, what's your take?
So frankly, it's a good point that you've raised. See, while electric is taking the pollution away from the cities because the tailpipe emission is not happening, but it is still the electricity transmission is not renewable today in India, right? But what I hear, what I learn is that about 40% of that now in India is, the grid is now on renewable. And there's a huge focus from our government, our Prime Minister, when we talk about COP70 and all of that, there is a mission to take it from 40 to about 80% over the next 20 years, right? But I would rather say that, yes, it is still, electric. When you do electric versus fuel, you are still saving pollution by 40%, right? So when we calculate at Zypp, on every kilometer that our vehicle is driven, it's saving about 65 grams of carbon. Right? So which is small, but it's one step at a time. But we are sitting in a country which is again, we have the largest land bank in that sense. We have huge power of sun coming to us. There are a lot of water resources. And that is what I would want to say, that people who are listening here, this is the land of opportunity. Why don't we put solar on rooftops of everyone? We have so much large land bank, and why can't electricity be generated via solar? Why solar has not picked up in India when there is so much possible in that, right? Absolutely. So I think those interventions are again one step. Someone like 6 years back, I was sitting and thinking about electrification. Maybe a lot of people who are listening here wanting to build startups, this is opportunity. Start working on renewables.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Akash, we probably have time for one last question. And, I said I had multiple questions, but, I'll try to stick to just one. You raised a very pertinent point that EVs are probably being adopted because of lower TCO, the lower operating cost. Yeah. And my question then is, should that be the only reason? While I understand, the cost economics are really important for every business, but should that lower operating cost be the only reason? Shouldn't we, as a society, shouldn't the consumers, right, your end consumers of Zomato, shouldn't they be, talking about, hey, I want a green delivery. I want to do my bit for the society, for sustainability, and I'm willing to pay in case there's any additional delta.
Say a premium.
But, say a premium, but for that sustainable choice. What do you think? Is this possible? And what can we, as part of the industry, do to make this happen?
So sure, I think great point that you've raised, but I'll give you an anecdote. And that's a real example. I was in London last week in a climate summit, and I saw that there were so many things which were pro to electric in London, and there's a sheer effort taken by the government, right? And how I can give you a few examples, right? The price of an EV car in London versus a petrol car was almost similar, right? In India, if you buy an electric, it's a 9 lakh versus a 16 lakh gap. A person would think that I'm paying for petrol on day one, right? That's one problem. Second, everything that they've set up crazy amount of charging stations everywhere, right? They have a very interesting concept that you cannot change the lane. There's a traffic congestion lane, right? So for electric, they've allowed the lane change at any point in time of the day. But on petrol, they charge a 15 pound per day fine if you even change the lane, on traffic. All the parkings, the electric charging is free. So these are a few efforts. There's Uber. When you call an Uber in London, you have an electric which is cheaper than petrol. So there are things which are happening, and why can't we take those certain efforts? When we talk to our customers, they would want that EV should be cheap. Versus EV is a lot more premium from a choice that, yes, you have to buy the vehicles, you have to deploy charging stations, you have to take care of the end of life of the battery. But yes, maybe on this stage, I can say that as a consumer, the next time when you're ordering goods, ordering food, ordering e-commerce, if you demand from the customer service, hey, can it be electric? Can it be on one of those green scooters or any of those companies who are building electric? I would be a happy man, and possibly India would be a happy place.
I hope so too, Akash. Akash, thank you for your time today. I think you really brought up some very interesting points, and I hope people who listen into you, they look forward to creating new startups in renewable energy, in sustainable business development, and the consumers, right? The people of India, they take this step, as you mentioned, to go on and say, hey, we are willing to pay that premium, if at all, but make that sustainable choice for the future of tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Ankit. It's a pleasure chatting with you, and great questions you asked today.
Thank you, Akash.
Appreciate it.